This is Michael Reeder, CPA, and owner of Reeder CPA Group. Welcome to Reeder's Playbook, where I talk with industry experts about practical strategies and insights that help business owners and entrepreneurs level up. Today, I'm talking with Jason West-McReynolds, founder of Fran Metrics. Hey, Jason, it's great to see you again. How you doing?
Good. How are you, Michael? Good to see you as well.
Yeah, doing good. Staying busy. So, how's life in Idaho?
It's great. That's great. Not a better place to be. Love it, especially
Yeah, I remember we were.
by the river. So yeah,
Oh
good.
man, yeah, Idaho in the summer sounds amazing.
It is. It is.
So why don't you tell the audience just a little bit about who you are and what you got going on in the franchise world?
Absolutely. So my name's Jason. I'm the founder of Fran Metrics, but I've been in franchising for around 30 years. Started my first business when I was 15. I was a CFO of a franchise company that I helped start, in 90 something or other. And then started doing my own consulting and helping other franchise organizations get set up. And then ended up where I'm at now doing software. And I still help a couple of franchise, like, emerging franchisors and new franchisors get developed, but mostly my focus is on the franchise space, where I have the company Fran Metrics, where we collect and share data to help franchisees make better business decisions. And that's basically what I do every day now. So that's kind of the short version of my history, but been doing it for a while.
Yeah, I mean I'm really impressed with your background. You've been in the franchise industry for a while. Fran Metrics, like let's lean into that a little bit more. So you started
Sure.
Fran Metrics to help support franchisors and franchisees. Tell me more about that.
Yeah. So the idea is when I was a franchisor or helping other franchisors, your job as the franchisor is to help franchisees be successful. Basically, they're your customers. And sometimes that's a thing for franchisors to understand is your customers are the franchisees. They're the ones you're supporting. They're the ones that you need to, that you're accountable to, basically. And if they don't make money, basically my theory is it's always the franchisor's fault. You pick the franchisees, so if they're the wrong people, that's your fault. You have the business model that's supposed to be profitable. You're the one responsible for building that relationship, supporting them, and offering advice and coaching. And so that's the theory is like, hey, we were commonly disconnected from the actual numbers behind the business of the franchisees. Back when there wasn't technology to collect the data, there was like, well, we didn't know. We didn't know you weren't making money. We didn't know your labor costs were too high or this cost was too high. We just didn't know. Well, those days are gone. And we can now, what Fran Metrics does is we collect that data. We collect it from the POS system, the CRM system, QuickBooks for financials, whatever feedback data, Google reviews. I mean, you name it. We put all the data in one place where a franchisor can look at a franchise and actually say, here's where there's some areas for opportunities for improvement. Here's where they're excelling, where we can say, look, you're doing really good at this, you're doing great at this, but here's where we see how you are below where your peers are on this particular metric. And by the way, franchisees can see it themselves without the franchisor telling them in our platform. But it's not just a financial tool. It's not just an operational or feedback tool. It's all of those combined to get a big picture, because numbers tell pictures. Numbers say something when you can collect the right data and see it. And so often franchisors would walk into a franchise business, see something and have a knee-jerk reaction, and they're, what they saw 1 minute of one time of the day, and say, this is how the problem with this franchisee. That's how it was done in the past. And, that's 50% right, maybe 50% wrong, because that's not an overall arching story of where that franchisee might be. So anyway, that's kind of the genesis of it, although it's kind of all over the place, but you get it, right? Hopefully.
No, absolutely, it's great stuff. I mean, what's present for me as I'm listening to you is, one, I love how you say how it's always the franchisor's fault. I love that. And because like it's not like this is not like a bashing of franchisors. What I hear in that when you say that, that is what a that is what leaders that's a leadership mentality. And so you can say the same thing with like employer employee. Like whatever happens at the company's fault is the employer's fault. It's the boss's fault. It's not the employee's fault. And because that that's now it goes back and it goes to the success principles of Jack Canfield, that book by Jack Canfield, and it just goes to mindset. The leadership mindset is everything starts and ends with me. My company, my fault, right?
Right.
Franchisor, if the franchisee fails, it's my fault, because then it's a slippery slope if you start to go the other direction. If you go the other direction, you start to go victim mentality, blaming others. It's not
Yeah.
my fault, it's your fault. And you want to know something? Even if it is their fault in that unique situation, still take the higher road and be the bigger person and say it's my fault. Like if one of my employees does like a massive screw up, it's my fault. Like
Right.
like even if it's like even if me and my team trained them and everything was good, it's like it's my fault. Like because that's the way leadership mentality should be. So first of all, I just loved how you were just like, hey, the burden is on the franchisor no matter what. I mean, do you think that franchisors if they fall into the trap of just trying to sell too many franchises, so that make some initial commissions, and they're not really doing a proper vetting process to make sure that they're getting the right franchisees? Is that a classic trap in the industry?
That's kind of the reason the bigger franchisors fail. And I get anxiety when I see somebody said, "Oh, we sold 100 locations already," and they have 5. To me, that's the biggest recipe for disaster that I've ever seen. I give them, usually a 30% chance of being successful, and they'll have these licenses sitting there forever, and they never get them open, and they don't have the support to support those openings, and they prioritize selling more than recruiting. When you're bringing on franchisees, we call it a sales and recruitment process, because it's both. The recruitment is making sure they're the right franchisees, right? A third of all franchising is finding the right people to franchise with you. That's a third of it. And the third of the effort should go into that. Because the wrong franchisees, you're not going to be happy. The franchisee is not going to be happy. These are not people that you're selling a t-shirt to. These are not consumers of your product or your services. These are people that are putting their savings, sometimes their whole life savings into your concept, and it should be a mutually beneficial partnership relationship. And I believe every decision a franchisor should be seen through the eyes of a franchisee, all of them. And be honest, it's the best way to grow a franchise organization. There's nothing there's nothing harder than to grow a franchise with disgruntled, unhappy, unprofitable franchisees. So you need those. It's better to slow roll it, get happy franchisees. And when you're doing the franchise offering and you find somebody you want in your organization, say, hey, call all my franchisees, right? Please do. That's not going to work with these people that go out and sell. It'll work for the first year until they're operational.
Yeah, absolutely. And as you're talking, like I had a great Zoom. I had a great not a Zoom, just a great networking call. Ben, you can do a microclip for this and give a plug to Adam. I had a great I had a great conversation with Adam Yazigian. And hey, Adam, sorry if I pronounced your last name wrong, but Adam Yazigian from Inago Cleaning Systems. Like they're super selective. Like they really are thorough. Like they bring on like very, very few franchisees each year because they're so focused on making sure that their existing franchisees are thriving. And so just want to give a plug to Adam Yazajian there from Inago, because that's something that's like fresh in my mind because I just talked to him like within the last 3 weeks. But yeah, I mean, that's the way it should be. And you said something, Jason, slow roll, right? Slow roll it, right? Like the goal is to create a long-term royalty stream right? Because if the
Right.
royalty stream is coming in, that means that the franchisee is in business year after year after year, right? And then, and that long-term royalty stream is what's going to make the franchisor sufficient. Whenever I look at the item 21 of a franchisor's FDD, I just take a quick glance. This doesn't always mean that it's a red flag, but I always take a quick glance at the item 21, right? The comparative financials of the franchisor, and I take
Right.
a quick glance at the year-over-year comparison. Because most item 20, so item for everyone listening, item 21 of the franchise disclosure document is the audited financial statements of the franchisor. So this is required. Every franchisor is required to disclose their audited financial statements of their last 2 years, as required by the FTC. This is different than item 19 of the FDD. Item 19 of the FDD are financial statistics of existing franchisees in the system or affiliate, corporate-owned stores in the system, and that's discretionary. Like that's not required. That's not required to be in the item 19. I could be wrong here, so I apologize anyone listening, but I think I saw something like recently, like Subway. Subway doesn't include anything in an item 19. I could be right. I think there was some major. So apologies, Subway, if I got that wrong. But I think it was Subway. But whatever. But we're not talking about item 19 here. Item 21, the audited financial statements. And by the way, quick little thing on item 19. I personally think that like franchisors should include an item 19, like always, but it's discretionary currently. But item 21, I always take a look at the year over year of the initial franchise fee revenue and the royalty revenue. If there was a spike in initial franchise fee revenue from the prior year to the more recent year, and there was a decrease in the royalty revenue, that doesn't necessarily mean this, but it could be a smoking gun that franchisor is more focused on selling as opposed to taking care of their franchisees. If they're having a decline in royalty revenue, but an increase in initial franchise fee revenue, I glance at that and it just, but if I see it the opposite, right? If I see royalty revenue increasing, I guess, it doesn't necessarily have to be in comparison to like one and the other, but I'm just looking for like, is royalty revenue increasing year over year? And is initial franchise fee revenue increasing year over year? Or if they're decreasing, or is one increasing and one is decreasing, that could just provide some insight into like where the franchisor's focus is in that moment in time. What are your thoughts on that, Jason?
Well, no, absolutely. That in line with item 20 and item 19, if they choose to disclose their financial performance representations for item 19. Item 20 shows the number of unit openings and closings. So in item 20, they have to do a 3-year look back period of every single new unit open, new unit closed, ceased operations. You have to say why they stopped, why they've closed. So you can find in unison with item 21, which is the audited financial statements in 20, really what they're going. And actually, there's a thing in item 20 that says how many units they plan on opening in the next year, which is always a funny thing to have because it's basically what they think they're going to open, and everything else in the disclosure is pretty much like a fact. It's like, this is what this is, and here we're asking the franchisor to make just kind of guess on how many new units are going to be in here next year. We can kind of see where their mind's at about how fast they think they're going to grow, or how much they want to grow, or how much they think they want, or what they want for potential franchisees to think about what they're growing, how fast they're growing. So that's always an interesting thing as well. But 100%, like how much initial franchise fees they're collecting in proportion to their existing size and what they're charging for the initial fee. It's all a matter of math on how much, where their focus is, I guess you could say. But, anybody
100%.
who's looking to be a prospective franchisee, rule number 1, talk to existing franchisees. Rule number 2, talk to existing franchisees. Yes, you're supposed to evaluate the FDD. I actually have helped do it. Yes, you should know the relationship and the agreement, but none of that at the end of the day tells you anything about how much the franchisor or focuses on the franchisees, how well they support the franchisees, how well thought out the operations are. Can you make money? I mean, even item 19s can be a little sticky on that because not all of them go down to EBITDA or profit. Usually they just, even though, now 75-80% of franchisors have an item 19, less than a third go down to some kind of metric that tells you how much money they're exactly making. And even when they do that, they put them in like, here's our top 10 performers and then our bottom 10. And we think you'll be in our top 10. It's always some kind of it's never really telling you the full picture. It's telling you the picture that the franchisor wants to tell you. And that doesn't mean that it's a bad investment. It just means that the franchisor designs and chooses the layout of item 19. You could look at a million item 19s and not find two that are the same exact format or disclose the same kind of numbers in the same kind of way. So it's always a puzzle you got to put together anyway. So anyway, those are my kind of thoughts.
So yeah, if you want to be a franchisee, rule number 1, talk to existing franchisees. Rule number 2, talk to existing franchisees. And what's rule number 3?
I think it's still you talk to some existing franchisees. I think that's the first.
Perfect.
There's always the due diligence that you should do as a matter of fact. Mm-hmm. But if you haven't talked to an existing franchisee, don't even, if you're not willing to do that, don't even bother. Because, at the end of the day, that 300, 400 page FTD, you're probably not going to read it. And if you did, you probably imagine reading a 300 page book and remembering every word on it. And now imagine if it's a
cure. Yeah.
I think
it's a cure for insomnia.
Yeah. I've read probably 200 of them, and trust me, it's the least.
You woke up the next morning, like on your bed, with 300 pages all over the bed. What happened last night? I made it to page 267. And I cured my insomnia.
Read that document and know what it's like going to be a franchisee. You're not going to have any idea. In fact, you might be more confused by what it's going to actually mean to be a franchisee. It doesn't mean you don't read it. It doesn't mean you don't understand it. People think I'm saying, oh, well, just don't even read it. No, you got to understand what you're paying. It's got a lot of stuff in there that is important, but knowing how to read it, what parts to read it, and kind of decoding it, what somebody can do for you isn't not. It's not that that's not important. It's just not nearly as important as talking to existing franchisees. That's number one.
Yeah. Absolutely. Switching gears real quick, Jason. So you started your entrepreneurial journey when you were just 15. What inspired you back in, what inspired you to dive into business at such a young age? And, what was your first venture?
Yeah. Well, it was really small because I was 15. I just would DJ dances. Literally, I would rent to own the sound system. This is a long time ago, but it was $50 to rent the sound system. But it was rent to own. I got paid my first gig $50, which then you didn't make any money. Well, no, it went to the purchase price of the equipment. And as crazy as that is, I was 15 and I was just I liked the sound equipment. I liked music and I liked doing it. And it was kind of just fun. And then, of course I started charging more. Eventually the equipment was paid off. Eventually I had 4 employees and 3 setups by the time I was 20. And so, I had employees and I had done all this by the time I was 20. And then I realized it was actually the worst business you could ever do. And who wants a business model where you're open 2 days a week on Fridays and Saturdays and you never get a weekend? It's wow, this is really not as good as it seemed like it was when I started. But yeah, so that's kind of that was kind of, but I learned how to scale. I learned how to have one DJ set up where I wasn't at, so I'd have, making money from something I wasn't actually, working at. So where it was kind of more of kind of like a franchise model where you're going to have an operation and a business operating at an arm's length, right? So it totally taught me a lot about what kind of things do I have to do to ensure that people show up on time and that the customer's happy, and how do I collect feedback, and how do I How do I make sure it's profitable? How do I make sure I'm charging the right amount, and that my equipment's taken care of, and that we clean up, and all those operational things that before I just did myself. Getting that information from the operations out of your head into a way that can be shared and codified and then replicated and then scaling. That's what franchising kind of is. And that consistency and making sure you can do those things. Yeah. So
Yeah, and that reminds me of the book, the E Myth by Michael Gerber. Have you ever read the E Myth? I mean, like he
only
talks
about
about the
10
franchise.
times.
Only about 10 times, right?
Yeah.
The franchise model doesn't necessarily mean it has to be a franchise business. It's just following. He talks about McDonald's a lot, obviously, in the book, but developing standard operating procedures, building systems, and having people work those systems. Have training manuals, just simplify it, codify it, as you said. Whether it's franchise or not, that is what goes into making a successful, sustainable, profitable business.
Yeah, I mean, if you go into it blindly and you're not tracking and you're not refining, and especially now if you're not utilizing technology, I mean, especially in the franchise world, you just it just doesn't you're not going to be able to replicate the experience for your customers. At the end of the day, your customers are always going to expect a certain experience or something they remembered, and they want it to be the same. And that's basically, even though his book is what he was getting at, is that people don't go to McDonald's because they think they're going to have the best burger in the world that they've ever had. But if you go into a town and you see a bunch of things, and at least you know what you're going to get, and it's going to be that way. When I went to China and
predictability.
Starbucks, I knew I was going to get a Starbucks, even though I wanted to try local food. I also wanted to try something familiar, and if it didn't taste the same, it would have really been a huge disappointment, even though I was on the other side of the world. And so that's franchising has a lot to do with that, and it's all about setting up the business model and creating results, tracking those results, and then sharing those results with franchisees who want to open a business. It's really important, and there's a certain characteristics of franchisees that make them successful to run the business model that that you want the franchisors to run, because they aren't visionaries. He talked about the E Myth. The E stands for entrepreneur. They're not entrepreneurs, but they are business operators. They are managers. There's a ton of people that want a system that's going to make them money where they own the business, but they didn't have to. They just want a successful operation, and they want to make money, and they want a return on their investment.
Right. And I think part of the myth is, for people that have read the book, you know what we're talking about, and people who haven't, Michael Gerber, the author of the E Myth and the E Myth Revisited, he delves into 3 different types of personas that we all have, right? Our technician persona, our manager persona, and our entrepreneurial persona. And to think that all business owners are entrepreneurs is the myth. That's the fallacy. Most business owners are technicians. We're technician dominant. We come to work and we have to sit down and do the thing, right? But then, when you start having lots of clients that they all need the thing, well, then you need more workers, and your inner manager needs to, the manager needs to, train those technicians. The entrepreneur needs to, be the visionary that thinks of other, revenue streams and different markets to, and you need all that stuff. But, most business owners are technicians, not entrepreneurs. And so I like the example that he gives, and just tying back to what you were saying about McDonald's and the experience that you're familiar with. Clients, customers, they like predictability. When you go to McDonald's, what there's there's a process. You can how it's going to be, because it's just it is a predictable process that is executed over and over. You know what you're going to get when you either go to the counter inside of McDonald's or you go to the drive-through. And he gave the example of when he went to get he got a haircut at this one place, and the first time he went, he had some experience. They served him some wine, while they washed, like they washed his hair, they kind of served him a little wine as he was waiting for his turn, and then like he thought that was cool. Like when he was waiting for his haircut, for his booth to be ready, and then the next time he went, like he got the haircut, but they didn't serve wine. And like the next time they went, like they served wine, but like they didn't, do the shampoo. It was just like, and then he ended
Yeah.
up, even though the haircut was fine every time, it was just kind of like it wasn't consistent each time. So he just found himself not wanting to go back because it wasn't consistent, it wasn't predictable.
Right. And you don't like, you have an expectation, even psychologically in the back of your head, what you think you're going to get. And when it doesn't go that way, it's just not attractive. Humans like some kind of, they like to know what they're going to be getting, especially from businesses when you're paying. Like it's an experience, and you want to be able to repeat
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
100%. Yeah.
And, everyone listening, we had, let's be honest, not Jason. Jason was here on time. I had some technical difficulties, which got us started on a late start for today's session. So we're going to wrap it up here, Jason. As we wrap it up, what trends do you see in the franchising industry in the next 5 to 10 years, and how can current franchisors prepare for these changes?
So for the next few years, I see a lot of emerging franchisors overcoming some of the more established. I see the bigger franchisees already starting to have problems, and I feel that like the technology and some of the things, the infrastructure and things that are being built are really giving these a few of them that I'm working with, emerging franchisors, real real heads up on some of the other ones. Like I'm not going to call anybody out, but if you're in like a personal care business and it's been around for 10 years and it's got thousands of locations, like they're probably, in my opinion, they're probably going to be kind of on the downside, going down the downside as far as
Do you think like by private, like for the private equity comes in like and buys those? Do you think that like when that happens, like the founders, they get bought out, and like now you don't have like the talent, like the so now you just have like maybe, and this may not be the case, but like maybe potentially like private equity puts people in place that really don't know what they're doing compared to the founders. Is that applicable or no?
No, it's a real big part of that equation. It's actually one of the three reasons I think it happens. There's three reasons. One is because these big ones are all bought out by equity firms, so the founder's not there. But remember, it all ties back to the first thing I said, that the franchisees are king. They're the ones that you're accountable to. They can't stand it when an equity firm buys them out. When they bought into the founder and the idea and the visionaries, and now you're owned by whatever conglomerate that also owns 5 other franchisors, it doesn't feel the same, and you feel kind of like you got stabbed in the back a lot of times. And that it's happening so much with a vast amount of these franchise systems where they get bought by some equity firm like you're talking about. The other is that like franchise systems that have been around 20 plus years have also built-in expectations into the operations that are now kind of antiquated, and it's really hard to move a ship that's that big. It's like steering the Titanic, as opposed to a small franchisor that's new, that has all these things preloaded, and that's how it's going. And they train their franchisees on the new way and the new technology, where the old ones can't move anymore. And so, you can't get the franchisees to buy in on the new stuff and all that kinds of things. So that's another problem that they face.
Well, Jason, you've got so much wisdom in the franchise industry and just entrepreneurial, advice overall. As we close, in closing, what advice would you give to entrepreneurs looking to get into franchising?
Yeah, do your due diligence. Call franchise. Don't look at one. Look at a handful. Do something that excites you, that you're passionate about. It's a business. You have to be excited about it. It's not just an investment, although it is an investment. Talk to the existing franchisees, read the FDD, and do your homework. And I highly recommend it. It's a risk, but high rewards. It's an educated risk if you do your research.
Amen, brother. In closing,
Yeah.
everyone, if you want to be a franchisee, talk to existing franchisees, talk to existing franchisees, talk to existing franchisees. Jason West-McReynolds, every conversation I have with you, man, is so insightful. Thank you so much for coming, and let's do it again sometime soon.
Love to. Yes, absolutely. All right. Thank you.